Okay, so today we are going to start constraint optimization, and on the left side there is a specimen kind of a diagram which will give us the feel, and it is kind of an adequate, simple geometric representation of constraint optimization, of what we do in constraint optimization. But uh, we will come to this diagram, but before that, it is safe to assume that we have studied unconstrained optimization. We have studied unconstrained optimization, right? And to that extent, about optimization, we know that, or about any kind of optimization, so to say, that we have certain choice variables. So in our problem, we will have variables that we choose to optimize, and those are called choice variables. Okay. Okay. Now, what is the difference here? Here we have a constraint. So that's why the name, obviously, constraint optimization. And constraint means basically something which restricts our work. And what is the general form of such constraints? Constraints are basically some kind of a dependency relationship. So some kind of a dependency relationship among the choice variables. Okay, and the reason of writing among is basically this: though we are going to be concerned ourselves only with two choice variables, okay, so although this is a part of multivariate calculus, we will mostly talk about bivariate optimization, but obviously these problems, they can be extended to any length, okay, and all the methods that we will learn, they are also applicable for a huge number of choice variables. But this is important, that the constraint is basically a dependency relationship among the choice variables, and this this dependency, the role of this dependency will become clear as we move into the details of this constraint optimization. So let us now come to the diagram. In this diagram, the dome that you see, okay, the bigger dome, let's say this is our optimization function curves shape, all right? So it's a 3D shape involving x, y, and z. So the function that we are looking at through this diagram is kind of is of this type: z equal to f of x comma y, and we are trying to optimize this function where the choice variables are x and y. Okay, so in this xy axis, if you see the bigger circle here, okay, that gives us the domain, or the possible values of xy. Now if I maximize, then typically the peak of this dome is this. So this will be our Z star, but this Z star will be our solution if we solve an unconstrained problem. Okay. So if we solve this problem, then we will get the value of Z star as at this point. Okay. Sometimes, as we say, as you'll see in the book, it is called a free maximum. Okay. So there is no constraint. But if I introduce one constraint, so if I introduce one constraint, some relation between x and y, okay, let's say this will be some g of x comma y equal to c, where c is a constant. Okay, so this is a constant, and let's say this gives us a straight line like this one. Okay, the smaller one. Now this smaller one, representing the constant, it suddenly restricts our observation to this slice. Okay, this typical slice which is drawn extra, which is somehow is ahead of the peak line. And obviously, if I consider finding maximum only on this slice, then our maximum will become this point. Let's say this is some Z1 star, and this Z1 star will be our constrained maximum. Okay, so this is our constrained maximum, which is constrained by this line, okay, this straight line, which is just a part of this the total set of arguments of x and y, possible values, all right? And that restricts us. So we cannot now, with this g of x comma y equal to c, we cannot go at this z star. We have to restrict our attention to only this slice, and here the maximum appears at z1 star. So what is the important message here? What is the learning? The learning is basically this, that this constraint changes optimum point. Okay, so that is the learning. And through the diagram, you can get the visual idea of it. And obviously, because it changes optimum, we are studying the constraint optimization. Because if we consider such a constraint which does not change the optimum point, then there is no point of saying it constraint at all. Okay, that will not give us a meaningful problem. It will be a waste of time. So we are interested in constraint optimization because that changes optimum, and we are interested in finding those values, those optimum values of our choice variables, which satisfy a given dependency relationship. Obviously, we are interested in this from the point of view of economics, primarily because of this problem, consumers optimization. Okay, this is the point of interest of us. Okay, so before going into the specific solutions of these kind of things, we are here learning the general mathematical apparatus, how to deal with it, what does it tell us, and what are the different methods. And then learning those general methodologies and general theories, we will then, with that theory, we will shed light on consumers optimization, and we'll try to learn some of the results of economics which we have either overlooked or just stated verbally when we studied it in microeconomics. Okay, so that is our objective here. Obviously, this chapter is a bit long. All right, so now we will go into the mathematics of it, and to start with, we will start with an example. We will take an example and we will solve it, and we will see how to solve a specific problem. Okay, and then in the next session we will move into the general construction, and we will learn something more. Okay, now before going into that, let me just say that if I have this one constant which is parallel to this x-axis, right? Okay, now if I introduce, say, another constant, so if I introduce another constant with this, okay, let's say some h of x comma y equal to d, and which goes like this, okay, so it goes like this. All right, then essentially there will be nothing to find the optimum for, because as you can see that if I introduce two constants, then this intersection point, okay, this intersection point, it will give us a very specific value, right? So there will be nothing to search over a curve. Okay, all right, okay. Okay, so let's proceed to an example. So to solve, we have taken a problem from we have taken a problem from Chiang's book. Okay. And it's exercise, at least the edition I have, the exercise is 12.2 and the problem number is 1C. So in 1C, the problem that we have is basically this. So I have this, optimize, okay. So z equal to x minus 3y minus xy subject to x plus y equal to 6, okay. So that is our problem, all right. So we have what we want to have. We have one objective function, right? And our choice variables are obviously x and y. And this is our constraint, which shows that whatever optimum we choose, we must guarantee that at equilibrium, x and y, they must add up to 6. Okay, that's something that we have to guarantee. All right, so now we will erase this diagram and see the methodology. So we will learn two kinds of solution. The first one is basically an approach which will make us able to use something that we learned earlier. So what is that approach? That is basically, so number one that we learn is that making multivariate problem and univariate problem. Okay. So that will be our first approach. Okay. And the second, that is something new we learn, is the Lagrange's method of undetermined multiplier. Okay, so there are two methods. Number one is we are going to make this two variable problem an univariate problem, and then we will do the exact same thing that we used to do. And the second is a different thing. Okay. You may have studied this in your maths general course. Okay. So let's learn the first one. So our problem is optimize x and y, z equal to x minus 3y minus xy subject to x plus y equal to 6. Now this is very easy. So from the constraint, I am choosing to express x equal to 6 minus y. You can do otherwise. Okay, there is no problem in it. And then we are going to substitute this in objective function. Okay, so that will give us 6 minus y minus 3y minus 6 minus y into y. Okay. So this is 6y plus y squared. All right. So this will become this. So here I have my bivariate problem expressed in an univariate structure. All right. Okay. So now we are going to simply maximize it. Okay. So we have expressed the problem. So now let us erase this. Okay. Erase all of this. All of this. And write this here. So z equal to y square minus 10y plus 6. Now, what about optimizing this one? Simple. The FOC is dz dy equal to 0, right? You could do it by yourself. Okay, so this makes y equal to 5. So this is our one optimum, right? Y equal to 5. And the other is, so from constraint, what is x? X equals to 6 minus y, so that is 1. So x star equal to 6 minus y star, and that is 1. So now if I put, so what in function z, so what will be z star? So that will be z star 1 comma 5, and that will be x, so that is 1 minus 3y 15, and xy 5, so it becomes minus 19, minus 1 9 19, right? Okay, so here we have the optimized value of z star, and since we are doing with univariate, it's very easy to check the second order. So if I check the second order, it gives us 2, which is a positive. So that means this is a minimum, right? So this is a minimum. So let us just sum up. The solution for us is 1 comma 5 as the value of x and y, and that gives us the optimized value is as minus 19, which is a minimum. So we have completed applying what we know already. Now we will go to Lagrange's method. Okay, now one of the reason of using Lagrange's method is essentially this, that the problems of constraint optimization are not really only of bivariate type, okay? And when we have multivariate, let's say we are talking about, let's say even a slightly bigger structure of, let's say 4 choice variables and 3 constraints involving 4 of the variables, okay, and using this approach, the whole thing can become quite complicated, and it will be a lengthy process to find the one, at least one of the choice variables value. So to bypass that kind of complexity, okay, we will use this Lagrange's method of undetermined multiplier. Obviously, it is slightly different from our standard optimization process. Okay, now since we are in mathematical economics, it is not only important to learn how we apply or what entails this Lagrange's method, it is also important how to write it, okay? Because I have seen different kinds of writings which are full of erroneous terms, okay, and sometimes they contain terms which are not defined at all. And in mathematics, if you do not define it, then you leave it at the liberty of the reader, and obviously that can lead to mistakes. Okay, so let us construct the Lagrangian now. So obviously our optimization problem remains the same, right? So z equal to x minus 3y minus xy subject to x plus y equal to 6. The only reason I'm writing this is one line is because the Lagrangian construction is quite huge. Okay. Now, the relevant Lagrangian of the problem is, remember, okay, because I have seen sometimes people writing Lagrange here. Do not write it. Lagrange is a name. He was a mathematician. Okay. And this is Lagrangian because we have this due to him. Okay. So Lagrangian of the problem is, so this is script L. Okay. You can write anything here actually, but I prefer to write script L to match with this L of Lagrangian. Okay. So first comes our objective function, that comes first. Now we are going to introduce a variable lambda. Okay, and I'll talk about what lambda is really, but for the time being, look at the structure. So I introduce a variable lambda, and then I write the constraint as this. Now remember one thing, I can also put here minus lambda, okay, and I can write x plus y minus 6. Okay, there is no harm in it. It will not change the value of lambda. Okay, so there is no problem with it. I can write in this way, but we prefer to write in this format. The reason is that there are some related derivations, okay, which are possible if you write it in this fashion. You can write it this way, but it makes things a bit complicated. So in exam, let's say if you are confused between whether it was plus lambda or whether it was minus lambda, do not bother, because writing any of them, it will not change the result. Okay, and why, that we will learn. Why it doesn't really affect the whole thing. Okay, all right. So what is lambda? We have to write it here. All right, do not miss writing it. So lambda is a Lagrangian multiplier. Okay, all right. Now in our consumer behavior problem, we generally get lambda to be positive, but it's not like that. Okay, lambda can be negative. Lambda will become negative in this problem. We'll see that. Okay. Okay, so this much you have to write always whenever you are writing Lagrangian. Do not miss writing this, because without this, again, lambda doesn't carry any meaning at all, or rather it carries every meaning that one can imagine. Okay, so a lambda is a Lagrangian multiplier. Now, so the problem here is that we have introduced another choice variable. So in Lagrangian method, we have, apart from x and y, lambda. Okay, now the natural question that comes in our mind is what it is doing here? What is the role of lambda? Now in short, intuitively speaking, the role of lambda is this. You have in microeconomics, you have seen that if I shift the budget constraint, or if there is some change in the budget constraint, then that gets reflected in the optimum value, right? And it's natural, because if your budget changes, then your ability of buying something that changes, that will obviously change the optimum. Now, while optimizing, lambda gives us the answer to this question of how that effect is being carried forward. So let's, for example, what I'm trying to say is that if I shift the budget line, how will the optimum change? Okay, all right. So that effect of this constraint is carried by lambda into the problem of optimization here. Okay, and using this lambda, that is why using this lambda, we can combine the objective function and the constraint in a single equation. And now we are going to optimize. And obviously we'll find lambda. Okay. All right. So the rest of it is pretty simple. It goes just like any bivariate, it's just like bivariate unconstant optimization. So here the FOCs are, so there are three variables, so there will be three, right? So x, so it will be 1 minus y minus lambda equal to 0. Then there will be this del L del y, so it will be minus 3 and minus x minus lambda equal to 0, right? Okay. Okay. And what will be the third one? Okay. So the third one will be del script del lambda equal to 6 minus x minus y equal to 0. Now, first of all, see that the third condition, it returns to us the constant itself. So that means that if I simultaneously solve these three conditions, and if I find my x, y, and lambda, then obviously at optimum our solution will satisfy the constant. That is guaranteed because the third condition is itself the constant. So there is no problem of making this kind of a mistake that we have our x and y, but they do not satisfy the constant. So that problem is resolved. Now, to find xy, we will deal with these two constraints. So the first one is give us this. The second one will give us this. And then we'll take a ratio. So that will give us minus 1. And from that, we have all right. And this basically says that x plus 4 equal to y. Okay. So here we have another x and y related equation, okay, apart from our constant. And we are just going to solve x and y from these two. All right. So now if I simultaneously solve them, it's pretty simple, right? So x plus 4 equal to 6. So that makes 2x equal to 2, x star equal to 1, and y star equal to 5. Okay, so that means we have got the old answer. So we are correct here, right? And we have showed the fact that using Lagrange's method, it doesn't give a different kind of an answer. So if I use Lagrange's method, I'm going to get the very same result. So I'm okay with using it. And we are going to use this Lagrange's method. Okay, so x star equal to 1 here, y star equal to 5. And taking help from the other problem, we know that z star equal to minus 19. Okay, so we're fine with that. Now, we're going to look at what happens to our script lambda. Because we have here, we did not maximize z. What we we did not optimize, optimized z. What we optimized here is lambda. Script tail, sorry, not lambda, script tail. So what is our script tail? Our script tail is this one. note that we have not found lambda, okay, yet. We are going to find, but that's fine. Now, if I put 5 and 1, if I put this here, if I put 1 and 5 here, okay, so this will give me 0. And since this will give me 0, immediately I know that my script L star, script L star is identically equal to my Z star. So that tells us two important things. Number one is that at optimum, it doesn't matter whether I'm optimizing Z star or at optimum, Z star and script L star, they give the same value. So that shows that indeed optimizing Z, the objective function, and optimizing script L, they are basically the same thing. And that is because at optimum, since this is one of the condition, it will be satisfied and this will give us 0 and this component will go away at optimum. Okay, so now here you see, here I have not put the value of lambda. So at optimum, on that point, lambda doesn't have any role, but lambda does have a role. And as I said, the role is this: if I move around the optimum point, okay, as we said, in the proximity. So if we move around in the proximity of the optimum point, then we will see the role of lambda. Okay, and by saying that, what I'm saying is that lambda, it involves or it allows some kind of comparative static. Okay, and we'll see that later. But for the time being, so we have learned these two methods. Okay, now last but not the least, what is the value of lambda? We have seen in one of our condition that 1 minus y equal to lambda. So for here, lambda star is basically minus 4. Okay, so that is our lambda star. Okay, so now what is our solution? Our solution is this: x star equal to 1, y star equal to 5, lambda star equal to minus 4, and z star equal to minus 19. Okay, all right. So about writing, what we say is that solving simultaneously, we get this result, okay? And then we just mention what is the value of z star and lambda star. All right. Now, we have here, because of two variables, we know that here we have this necessary condition that we found in the mean while solving the problem. We found a relationship from the first to first order condition, right, which we substituted here, and that condition was x plus 4 equal to y. So this is our, what is this? This is, we said this is the necessary condition in summary, let's say. Yeah, so necessary condition in summary from these two, right? Okay, now from the first approach, okay, that is when you use substitution, from that approach we know that this z star is a minimum. Now from the first method we have known it because we found this d2z dy2 to be positive. Now the question is, here we have two variables x and y. So definitely we will have in second order, if we move into second order, then we will have first a set of second orders, right? So like this, we will have a set of second orders. And then we will also have a set of cross partials. So you'll have this and this. And we also know that if certain conditions of continuity are satisfied in these two cross partials, then by Young's theorem, these two are equal. Okay, but the question is that how must we improve our second order condition here? Because definitely it will not look like the second order condition of unconstrained optimization, but it will look similar to the second order condition of unconstrained optimization. So first question is, what will be the second order conditions general structure here, which will give us, which will tell us that, okay, we have found the minimum. And the second is, which we left, what we left is how to interpret lambda. Now, to do these, to answer these two questions, okay, we need to consider the general structure of this bivariate optimization problem. So the question that we are trying to answer is first the second order condition that we are interested to find, and number two is interpretation of lambda. So that is also something that we are interested in. But for that, we need the general structure. Okay. And how must we write the general structure? So the general structure will be this. It's optimize z equal to f of x comma y, where x and y are choice variables, subject to g of x comma y equal to c, and obviously the corresponding Lagrangian is following the general structure. So script L equal to f of x comma y plus lambda into c minus g of x comma y. Okay. All right. And yes, if we now move into the first order conditions, our relevant first order conditions are this. So we are going to use a bit of a notation to use some kind of a compact writing. So if I differentiate with lambda, it will give us the constraint, right? And then if we differentiate by x, then this will give us the first order partial with respect to x minus lambda gx, okay, where this function g of x comma y, we have taken first order partial of it, and lambda y will be fy minus lambda gy. So this will be our first order condition. So these are the first order conditions of the general structure of the problem. And just to explicitly write here, if x means basically del f del x and gx means del g del x. Now Just before moving into something else, I'll just mention that do not ever assume that our del f del x or our del g del x, they are just function of x or y. Okay? Always in your mind, keep this, that I am actually saying that my fx is a function which involves both x and y. My gx is a function, sorry, which involves both x and y. Okay, I'm working in the general structure here, because generally what happens in consumer behavior problems is that in consumer behavior you have this here in here as a constant you have a term like this, px into x, and if you differentiate, what you have is only px. So in our mind we have this tendency to assume that we are talking in gx, at least we are talking about something like a constant or probably a function which involves only x or only y. Forget it, it's not like that. Okay, so here fx also involves x comma y, gx also can involve x comma y, and so that is also true for fy and gy. Okay, so whenever you are dealing with the general structure in your head, always keep in mind that in general structure we have to go assuming everything. All right, now from this first order condition, so keeping this in mind, from the first order condition, like earlier, we can eliminate lambda from the last two conditions, right? So how will I do that? It's very simple. So from this one, we have fx equal to lambda gx, and from the third one, we have fy equal to lambda gy. And if I take a ratio of this, then I have, so here I have fx by fy equal to gx by gy. So we have successfully eliminated lambda, right? And this equation or this necessary condition, okay, this will give us the relationship between x and y, the other relationship between x and y, right? So this will give us this summary necessary condition. So I'll write it here. This is my, at times in economics at least we say, we more frequently use this phrase that this is our equilibrium condition. And to keep the mathematical mind here, we will also write necessary condition here. Okay, so this is my necessary condition, and this one is my constraint, right? This one is my constraint and this one is my necessary condition, and with these two I will get the optimum value of x and y. Now one thing that I must say is that look at this condition. This condition can be written in many forms, and in at least one of the form is very important. So this is our important form. What is this form? The form is this. If I, so from here, okay, so from here, if I write like this, fx divided by gx equal to lambda is also equal to fy divided by gy. So what does this mean? Okay, now for the time being, it's difficult to interpret lambda from only from this equation. Obviously in consumer behavior problem you will get a ready-made interpretation, okay, of what fx by gx or fy by gy actually means. Okay, if you open a standard slightly advanced microbook you will see. And I'll just mention okay, that the consumer behavior counterpart result here is this. It will give you mu x by px. Okay, so this is the consumer behavior counterpart. Now looking at this counterpart, the counterpart basically gives us a very important thing. It says how much marginal utility you are getting by spending an extra, or not extra, you are getting by at each unit of price, right? You're paying this price, and at 1 unit you are buying, basically at this price you are buying this amount of marginal utility. So as a ratio, this gives us a more interpretable information, which is obviously not really clear here because it's the general structure, but we will have a clear interpretation of lambda later. Now for the time being, let's forget this for the time being, because we'll say it more clearly while solving consumer behavior problem. Now look at here what this says. This says that slopes must be equal, right? This equality, it says the slopes must be equal. Of whom? Of z and of our constraint. But where? At optimum, right? Because this is my equilibrium condition. So let us write it a bit clearly. Okay, so let us go away from this clumsiness and let us write this result a bit clearly. So what is the result here? The result is this, that at optimum the slope of objective function and the constraint must be equal. So what do you have here? At optimum, the slope of objective function and the constraint must be equal. Now, as I said, that this is indeed a very important result. I'll just mention what lambda actually is. And then in the next session, we will find, or we will actually derive the result. Okay, because that derivation is a bit long. Okay. So what is the result? To put it simply, the result is this. At equilibrium, dz star dc, or shall I write d lambda star? Yes, that's the correct one. So d script L star dc equal to lambda star. Okay, so at optimum, so here the script L star is basically the value of script L star if I take the optimal value of x star, y star and lambda star. Okay, and how am I being able to differentiate this with respect to C? Note many things are of consideration here. First is, here I do not see partial differentiation. This is total differentiation, right? So that means this lambda star, it doesn't have any other variable argument apart from C, and that is at equilibrium. So that's the first thing, and that's very important. And the second is that here we have our lambda star, which says that lambda star basically gives us that if I change the value of C by a very small amount, right? So that's why I said in the proximity of the equilibrium. I'm using this because of this differentiation. So if I change C by a very small amount, then the resulting change in script tail star, so the resulting change in the optimized value will be connected by the lambda star. That is the value of lambda that we found at equilibrium. Okay. Now just to give you a hint, note that in our lambda star, or sorry, in our lambda, in the general construction of lambda, okay, we have only one parameter, and that parameter is C. So here we have only one, here we have only one parameter, right? So only one parameter. And that parameter is C. So what does it tell us? It tells us that at optimum, X star is X star of C, Y star is Y star of C, and lambda star is lambda star of C, right? That's what it tells us. Now, given this information, what we'll be doing is pretty simple. We will be using, rather by the use of implicit function theorem, we will going to get this comparative static result. All right. Okay. So how am I going to do that? Let me just write this. Transforming the FOCs in implicit structure. We can write this, right? We can write this F1. So this is our first function, X star, Y star, lambda star, and the semicolon, then C. That shows that here you have C as a parameter. And note that all are written by star. So that means we are working in equilibrium, right? So everything that we're going to get is at equilibrium. Never forget that, because if you write in general, then whatever you will write will be wrong. The result holds in the proximity of the equilibrium. Okay, so these three are our first order conditions written in implicit structure. And what we are going to do is that first we are going to say that given these two things are true, that X star is X star of C, Y star is Y star of C, and lambda star is lambda star of C. If that is true, then L star equal to L star of X star, Y star, and lambda star, that can be written as L star of C, right? Okay. And then we will simply differentiate. All right. So I'll just write the first line of this derivation, right? So what will be our first line? The first line is this. Here we have our L star, script L star equal of C is basically this, right? F of x star, y star plus lambda star equal to C minus G of x star, y star. Okay. Now the work that we are going to do here is pretty simple. We are going to do d script L star dc. Okay. And at the end, we will see that this will equate to lambda star. So if I continue doing this, the last line will be equal to lambda star. So that will be our last line. So our L star C is basically this, right? Our old script L star L. This is our script L written at the equilibrium value of x, y, and lambda. Okay, so that's all the stars here, right? Okay, so this is our structure of script L, that is structure of our Lagrangian, at equilibrium. Okay, and the task that we will perform here is simply this: we will differentiate L star by C, as we saw that within this structure there is no variable apart from C, because C is the only parameter, and obviously we are going to get the result as this one. So that is our lambda star. So this will be our result. But before before doing the derivation, I'll ask to go through the general solution and the specific solution, at least the general solution once, so that when we are going to use that general solution, whatever you obtain from the general solution in the derivation, there won't be any problem. Okay. So in the next session, we'll just write the lines in between these two.